Hi, good evening, everyone. I am going to try to get this set where it will stay propped up for me right here on my computer. Let me see if I can get it in a good place. I might have to unplug it. Yeah, we'll do that. How are you all? As we're kind of waiting for everyone to get on. Sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth. I'm going to try not to cough on you guys. I got a chest cold last week, and it has, just been taking a while to work through my system. So, thank you. I sounded awful last week, Melissa. So, I sound much better today than I did. So, I think I can get through this all right. My biggest concern is coughing up a lung on you guys. So, I'm going to try not to do that. I've got my Thieves cough drops going, and so I'm going to try not to choke on the one that's in my mouth while I'm doing this also. So one of the things while we're getting started and people are getting on is I want you to make sure you have a pen and a piece of paper. If you're already planning on having that for taking notes. If not, go grab one real quick. It can be a piece of scrap paper. We're going to do a little exercise. And I want you to just have that handy because it's going to be really helpful to give you, we're kind of going to do some exercises and give you some tools to get you through this and give you some ideas. So I do not want to shut down my computer. My computer's asking me that. I have a lot of different things here. I've got my notes here. I've got my notes printed. I also have about 3 or 4 different books that I'm going to try to be going through. I want to tell you guys, my name is Ashley Boyd. It's nice to meet you all. I know we have some people on here that may not know me. I am a believer in Jesus Christ, and that is going to be very prevalent in this. So if you are not, it doesn't mean that these tools are not going to be helpful for you, but I also want you guys to know that I am going to be referring to biblical texts and things like that because I think that for those of us that are believers, it's very helpful to know where these things and these ideas fall in line biblically. Some resources. Well, first, I want you guys to just be saying hi. Tell us where you're joining in from. I see Lindsay and Tawny and Caroline have gotten on. I think I should be able to see the chat feed, and I want to be able to respond to you guys. It helps me. I like the call and response. I like to talk to you all, so please interact with me. I'm going to pull this a little bit closer here. Savannah, hey Jenna, Lisa, hey Amy from Boonville, Missouri, Lindsay. I know where Lindsay's from, but I'm going to let her say it. And excuse me there. Mary from North Carolina. Shallot. Is that how you say that? Tawny from Providence, close by. Lindsay's from Toole. I wasn't going to say that for you, Lindsay, but I know where you're from. I've been out your direction a few times. So we got a lot of Texas people. We got some of our Tennessee people joining in. I know Melissa's out in Florida. Victoria, good. I thank you guys so much for being patient with me as we had to delay this from Saturday. And I know it hit me this afternoon. I was like, it's daylight savings. It's the Monday after daylight savings, and we're all going to be completely exhausted. So, yeah, I don't know how to say that. Dawn from Happy, Texas. That's a fun place to be from. I'm from Happy, Texas. So I thank you guys for your patience, for your grace as we moved it to tonight, because I'm going to be able to get through this so much better. I did get a nap, but my brain is still, when you've got like a cold and how your brain just kind of moves a little bit slower. So I got my nitro going, my Ningxia Red and nitro. Haven't finished it yet. I'll be sipping on that throughout. So hopefully my brain will be present. Just be patient with me as we go through this. To give you guys some resources that I'm going to be pulling from. This is Switch On Your Brain by Dr. Caroline Leaf. She is a Christian neuroscientist. She has some amazing trainings online. You can go search YouTube. She does conferences. She's South African, so that's her accent. It's fantastic. But she does a great job really pulling some of the things that we're going to talk about from other books and bringing a biblical perspective to them. I love Dr. Caroline Leaf. I love to listen to her because even though she's like a science person, and I'm not at all, I'm going to warn you guys of that, she's a big science person. She really makes it for me connect to what I believe about these things and what how that fits into my faith. So that's important. This is the Essential Oils Desk Reference. This one's a heavy one. All right. Okay, guys. So I got this book forever ago, and I'm the worst about not reading all the way through. I didn't read all the way through this book. It's like a textbook. I use it as needed, and it has a whole section on emotional oils and using oils for emotions. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. There is this book, which I have read all the way through, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die by Carol K. Trueman. This book is awesome. It is life-changing. It is not about oils, but in the back of it, what it has is a little resource of, I have a page marked here that I have to share with you guys, but it's a resource, a little chart, or, well, no, it's a section that you can just look up different issues, and it can give you the underlying emotional issues connected with those physical issues. We'll talk about laryngitis in a little bit, so I'll be telling on myself with that. And one more that I have here, and that is Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils. This is by Dr. Carolyn Mine, and she talks about Young Living oils specifically. She does trainings. I think she was just in Oklahoma City. But I actually have not read this book cover to cover, but it is basically a reference guide for oils and emotions and physical issues and emotions and different places to use them. So anyways, I'm going to be utilizing some things from this book also. There's also another book. Let me look and see what it's called. I don't want to get the title wrong. This other book is called Emotional Healing with Essential Oils by Daniel McDonald. And I actually have that on my Kindle, so I don't have the physical book. I need to get the physical book because the Kindle is hard to flip through. But he's actually not with Young Living. He talks about oils in a more general resource, or in a more general sense. He talks about singles and things like that. But that book has been really, really phenomenal for me. And some things that I've been through and some things that I've read on there that just really click with emotions and things that I've been dealing with. And so anyways, that is a really great resource. So I'm not going to pull something from every one of those books, but I wanted to give you guys some great resources for where you can go next. His name was Daniel McDonald. Yes, I'll make a post that has all the books typed out, their title and their author, so that you can go back and get them. There's also a website, and he has a book also. It's the Aroma Freedom Technique, and he has a book also. So that's just a really great resource, and it is going to tie a lot into all the other things that we're going to talk about. So anyways, I want to let you guys know, this is not my area of expertise. This is an area that I've been diving into and researching a lot about over the last probably 2 years, because it was something I didn't know a lot about. I didn't really know how I felt about it. I think as somebody that comes from a very conservative Christian background, sometimes when you start getting into the emotional side of things, it gets very uncomfortable because it starts to feel kind of new agey, and I always kind of find myself taking a step back and going, wait a second, now where does that line up with what I believe biblically? And I think that what we've done, in at least I've seen in my faith personally, is we kind of have taken things that the New Age movement takes and utilizes, and we want to just throw it out, when instead what they've done is taken the way God has created things and created us and found a way to utilize them. They just take God out of it completely. So imagine if we took the way and understood the way God created us and actually utilized these tools and resources in order to heal and on an emotional and spiritual level. And so that's really kind of what we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to tell you that this is going to be surface level, okay? I'm not going to go super in depth into different techniques. I am going to talk about some basic techniques there. Like I said, I'm going to send you to, I'll have that Aroma Freedom website link posted, because he talks about a technique. There are a lot of different emotional release techniques. So we're not going to get super in depth into that. We're going to instead just really try to understand the basics of how the oils work and why it matters, how our emotions affect our bodies physically. That's really what we're going to be talking about. So I am looking over here at my computer, and sorry, my computer's on a swivelly chair, so I'm trying not to move it too much. To let you know what I'm wearing, my oils, if you want to wear the same ones, I actually have Sacred Frankincense on right now because I knew for my respiratory support and my cognitive support, and then just praying that God would use this in a really awesome way for somebody tonight. I just, that was the oil that I felt like I needed to use. I love Tranquil also. I put that on earlier before I took a nap. But Sacred Frankincense is the oil that I am wearing at the moment. It is one that I have been using a lot over this past week. So what we're talking about tonight, basically, sum it all up, is emotional health and how to eliminate toxic thoughts, thought patterns, and emotions to contribute to overall better wellness. We all know people that have toxic thought patterns. We all get in those modes too, where we have toxic thought patterns. But those toxic thought patterns can affect you on a physical level. And this is not just a theory. It's actually something that's being proven by science. And a lot of doctors are really starting to realize this. A lot of counselors are starting to realize this. I think back to a time when I was younger. We lived in upstate New York, and my parents were, we had moved, 2,500 miles away from any family. We had lived up there for 2 years, and my dad was ready to come back home. He was ready to move back to Texas. I was about 9 years old at the time. My sister was about 7, and he decided to quit his job and move to Texas without a job, move back to Texas without a job lined up or anything. And he was sick over it. I mean, I remember my dad hardly ever gets sick about anything, or gets sick at all. And he was sick, physically ill over this decision to move our family back and without having a job lined up. And thankfully God worked it all out. He had a job by the time we got back here and everything. But how many of you have ever been in that situation where you have been stressed over a specific decision you have to make or something like that, and you have a physical reaction, or you lose somebody, or you have a horrible trauma in your life and you have a physical reaction? Maybe it's sick to your stomach. Maybe you get physically ill, like flu-like, okay? So these are the extreme cases of what we know, where we know that that emotional issues and emotional trauma can have a physical result on us. But imagine instead of something big and major, we just have daily negative thoughts, daily toxic thoughts that we are pouring into our brains and our bodies, okay? Over time, that can have a detrimental effect on your life and on your health. Excuse me. Okay, so why does it matter? And one of the things that it's so important to understand about why this is so important is because what they're realizing is 75 to 98% of physical ailments actually stem from thought, all right? From our thought lives and our thought patterns. So taking care of your emotional and mental health is at least as important as taking care of your physical health. Right now, you have a lot of, we have a lot of things going on, a lot of focus on getting toxins out of our home. And that was really one of the reasons why we got involved in Young Living, because we wanted to get the toxins out of our home, the chemicals out of our home. But it's kind of silly to do that and still breed toxic and pour toxic thoughts and emotions into our bodies on a consistent basis. Okay, so if we clean up our physical homes and clean out the chemicals and all that kind of stuff, that's all great and that's wonderful. But we can do a lot of damage right here. And so we have to make sure that we get to a point where we're ready to take time to focus on this, what's happening on the inside, what's happening in our minds, and what's happening in our emotions, okay? I'm going to talk a lot about thoughts and emotions almost interchangeably. And the reason why, it's not that they aren't different, they are different. Emotions are the feelings that we feel. But when you have emotional trauma, what happens is you replay that trauma in your head over and over again, and it becomes a thought pattern. So it creates that emotional memory, okay? I am going to break down something that Caroline Leaf does, and this helps me so much to understand how our bodies, how our brains work, okay? Our brains have this part called the amygdala, and she says it's the library, okay? Our library brain, all right? So our library brain is where we store all of our memories. So if you have a really horrible experience in a math class and a math teacher embarrasses you and you get anxiety, you got anxiety really bad, that becomes etched in your memory, okay? And it's related to math, right? Maybe related to school altogether. So every time you have another experience, any experience that we have in life goes through our brain library. It goes through our amygdala, all right? So we always have to understand everything we experience is only our perception, all right? It is only our perception, and our perception is not always reality. In fact, most of the time, our perceptions are so tainted that it barely even resembles reality, okay? So we have to see and understand that that is our perception. So then the next time you go into a math class and you sit down, you start to get sweaty hands, you start to get nervous. It might be a different class, it might be a different year, it might be a different teacher. But the reality is, your experience in that classroom is going, and what your experience right then is going through your amygdala. It hits that memory in your brain library of being anxious and nervous and having anxiety in a math class, and it kicks it right back in, all right? We all know that brain pathways, once they're created, they can, it's easy to go down that path again. Once you go down that path again, it's easy to go down that path again and again and again. The deeper that pathway gets, the easier it is to go there. That's why sometimes trauma, yes, it wakes it up. You're exactly right, LaShonda. That's why sometimes trauma can trigger the first anxiety attack. But then you replay that trauma in your head over and over again, and it triggers anxiety attack, anxiety attack, anxiety attack, until it gets to a point where you have anxiety that just pops up out of nowhere. Because your brain just goes there. Anytime it's stressed, suddenly now you go into anxiety attack and anxiety mode when there's not even a real threat, okay? So this is why this is so incredibly important. And this is why I'm talking about emotions and thoughts, and I'm going to kind of interchange them, because the emotion, the anxiety, the nervousness, and all of that was there, but it's the thought and thinking about it over and over again that creates the pathway. Does that make sense? And our thoughts are real, tangible things. That's what we have to understand. This is one of the things that was hard for me, and this is one of the things that Caroline Leaf really helped me understand, because I always want to think of thoughts as being like these imaginary things up in the clouds, these intangible, like little, ideas. You get thought bubbles, and we picture thought bubbles, so we picture thoughts being outside of us and outside of who we are, okay? Instead of being ingrained in us and a part of us. So this is what Caroline Leaf says about thoughts. When you are thinking, your mind activity creates fields that can be measured, magnetic fields that can be measured. So this is scientific. Electrical impulses that can be tracked, chemical effects that can be seen and measured, photons to be activated that can be captured on computer screens, energy activity that can be explained using quantum physics, and vibrations in the membranes of the neurons that can be picked up by instrumentation. That's what thinking does. Thinking creates a physical reaction, and it can actually be seen. Thoughts, an actual thought, can be seen on a scan, all right? And I don't know with what kind of scan, but she has some really great pictures in here of thoughts. And the great thing is, the amazing thing is that a healthy thought, a productive thought, has a look about it like a tree, all right? If you watch the video I posted in this, and if you haven't, you might want to go back and watch it. It's Caroline Leaf, and she's talking about this. It has a picture. It looks like a healthy tree. And then a toxic thought, a negative thought, has a very rigid, jagged, look like a dead tree. Like, it looks different. It looks unhealthy. You just look at it and go, oh, wow, that's not going to produce anything good or healthy. Well, this thought looks like something that is flourishing and growing. It's really fairly incredible. So when we think about that, I'm going to see if I can find that picture in here. Just flipping through to show you guys. I don't see it off the top of my head. But go back. If you go and scroll down after this is done in the event, I posted that video of Caroline Leaf, and she kind of explains all that in so much better detail than I can. But for me, it helps so much to understand that our thoughts are real things. that they're created in our brain and they're there, all right? Because then that becomes a part of who we are. And we want, just like if we have something on our skin that isn't healthy, or we have a part of our body that's not working properly, we want to get it taken care of. We don't want to be creating these nasty, gangly looking thoughts in our head that aren't healthy for our brain and can create physical problems elsewhere, okay? All right, so we're going to talk real quick about, I'm going to tell a quick little story about laryngitis. So just to give you an idea of how this works. So I was looking up last week because I did wind up with a chest cold and wound up with laryngitis. And I thought, I'm going to look up the physical or the emotional roots of laryngitis, okay? This little book here, this is from Feelings Buried Alive. It gives you a lot of options. It doesn't necessarily mean all of them, but I'm going to tell you what really struck me. It says, fears voicing opinions, feelings of resentment toward authority, repressed emotions and fears, grip to anger, or irritation at someone or some situation. All right, I'm going to be real transparent with you guys here. And I think most of us on here are women, so maybe this will go over a little better. But I have been struggling over the last few weeks with a little bit of frustration in my church culture. Not my personal church. My personal church I love. I want to, preface it with that. But my church culture, the church culture that I grew up in, I feel like God is calling us to something greater. And I feel a need and a desire to go deeper in the Word and have somebody mentor me and coach me. My husband is going through this really great Monday night Bible study with a man who's like 80 years, literally in his 80s, and is a missionary to Africa and does leadership trainings in Africa. And he only he'll only disciple men. And a lot of the older generation has that kind of mentality, and I understand it. But the frustrating part comes when there's not women that can do that for us. So then I go, well, where does that leave me? And then I start looking at, okay, do I need to go to seminary? Do I need to start taking some Bible classes? And then even seeing the segregation in some of the seminaries between the men and the women, and how women aren't necessarily allowed to have the same kind of training the men are not in all seminaries, but in some of them. And it was very frustrating to me. My dad's a pastor, so I was sharing this frustration with him, and he was supportive of me. And so this kind of feeling this like repressed emotion and angers. I don't know that I repressed it a whole lot. Fear of voicing opinions. I've been very careful about how to say that and say those things, because I do believe that God created men and women differently for a reason, and we have our purposes and we serve in different ways. And I do believe that. But I also believe that God created women for leadership roles as well. Maybe not necessarily leading a church or pastoring a church, but still for leadership roles in a spiritual, in the spiritual sense. So it was just funny because I started reading through it and I was like, oh yeah, of course. Not only that, but I had a crazy dream on Monday night that was kind of a warning to me about some spiritual attacks. And then Monday night is when it was Sunday night I had the dream, and then Monday night is when this hit. So there are a lot of different things that can happen. And when we feel ourselves either emotionally or spiritually weakened, it can really affect us in a physical way. Because I haven't gotten anything this whole season. I was very good about supporting my immune system. And then this is when it hits. And it makes total sense. So that's just my little tidbit and my little testimony to you guys, that this is something that you can see in your daily life. Even it's something that I have been going through recently. But even the Bible points to the importance of our thought life. I mean, Jesus took all of the legalism of the Old Testament and he brought it to like the deeper level of what we think and how we feel and what our thought life is like. He said, I say that if you just look on a woman and lust after her, then you have committed adultery in your heart. That's what Jesus said. So he was like, hey, this is something that is way deeper than just what our actions and what we do, that Jesus placed an extreme importance on what happens in our minds and what we do there. Philippians 4 verses 6 through 9 says, do not be anxious about anything. Those of you, I saw several people talking about anxiety attacks. You're dealing with that. Memorize this verse, all right? And and just rest in it, okay? It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the peace of God will be with you. All right, so that's what the Bible says about what we should do and what we should be doing in our thought lives. All right, there are a bazillion others in the New Testament, but that's an easy one to focus on and think about, okay? So this whole importance of our thought lives is extremely biblical. It has an effect on us physically, all right? So one of the things that we have to understand is that our thought life is going to be influenced by our past experiences, okay? If you have an emotional trauma, we talked about this earlier, but if you have a trauma or a bad experience, that can cause, and then you have a new experience that comes up that in some way triggers that bad experience, it's going to cause emotions unrelated to this new experience, okay? So maybe it's going to cause insecurity in math for the rest of your life, or anxiety with math for the rest of your life because of one bad experience, all right, in a math class. Maybe it can cause, maybe you had an issue in a social situation, or maybe your boundaries were crossed, all right? People that have been abused sometimes have issues in social situations because they have a hard time getting in a room full of people where they're not going to be able to protect their boundaries as well. They do better in a smaller group of people, or sometimes they just choose to stay home and they become a little reclusive, all right? So think about how this can affect not only your physical body, but how it's going to affect your life and the fullness of your life. If you're not able to build relationships, you're not able to pour into others because you're thinking so much about what's going on here, all right? So one of the things that I want you guys to think about, this is where our activity comes in, is we're going to talk about how we process emotions, all right? Because it's not about being unemotional at all. We are emotional beings. God created us to experience emotion. Jesus experienced all kinds of emotions, all right? But one of the problems that happens is that we sometimes aren't able to fully experience that emotion. And sometimes we aren't able to fully work through that emotion before we have to get back to reality or whatever. If we have to cut it off and we shove it to the side, that's where problems are caused, all right? Because what happens is that emotion, that thought has, right, it is something physical, and it will be stored in your body somewhere, all right? This is where it seems kind of crazy, but I want you guys to follow with me here. Emotions have a frequency, okay? The easiest way for me to explain this is I'm a theater person, so I think in like art forms, all right? Musical tones have frequencies, right? So if the lower tones have a lower frequency, higher tones have a higher vibrational frequency, and different tones put together bring out different emotions in us, correct? I mean, we think about that with music. The idea of music affecting us emotionally, making us feel a certain way is not crazy to us at all right? But a lot of times it's us responding to that frequency of sound that comes out and comes to us in a certain way. Art is the same way. Colors and shapes, they have certain frequencies, and when put together in certain ways, they can evoke certain emotions in us, all right? So in color, when you get in a theater space, and you hear music and you see lighting a certain way and all this kind of stuff, it can be an extremely emotional experience. I was talking to a dear friend who was up in Branson and watched the production of Moses they have up there. She said it was just like within the first 5 minutes she was in tears. She said it was just so overwhelming. All of it was just, taking it all in, and it can be such an emotional and moving experience. That's because those frequencies respond to us on an emotional level, and our emotions have a frequency, all right? The amazing thing about the oils is that the oils have a frequency too, and Gary is brilliant and really made the oils match the frequency of certain emotions, all right? Not only that, but parts of our bodies have certain emotion or certain frequencies. So if we are struggling with anger and we tend to stuff the anger instead of let it out, then that's going to go to our liver, and that's likely where that emotion is going to be stored, because our liver has the same frequency as anger. All right, so you think about that and think about angry drunks and things like that. Like, there's a whole nother trail that you could go down about people that drink or have major liver issues and deal with a lot of anger. Okay, so it's crazy when you really get into that and go that. We're not going to go all that deep and into the different body parts that it can be stored in, but I just want you guys to know that that's what can happen. And when Dr. Bradley Nelson wrote a book called The Emotion Code, and he is not a believer, and some of his stuff I kind of pushed to the side, but one of the things that he talked about is that he works through emotional release with his clients, and every single person that he worked with that had cancer had a stored emotion in that cancer. He said, now, I don't know if the emotion was there first and the cancer was drawn to it out of that, or if the cancer weakened that area, and so that was just a great place for the emotion to go. He said, but I do know that it was hard for them to heal until that emotion was released, until that emotion was gone and it was cleared from their body in that way, okay? And some of this happens on a subconscious level, all right? This is where it gets a little crazy too. We aren't always aware of how we feel. I mean, how many of you guys know that, where you start acting kind of crazy and you're like, why am I acting this way? I'm not even consciously aware of how I feel, but I'm acting on it. I don't know why this is frustrating me, or I don't know why this is, but really on a subconscious level, you're connecting it back to a past memory or a past experience. You may not even be aware of what it is. Okay, so what it takes sometimes in working through this is to think about how you process emotions, number one. Think about past experiences and past traumas. Think about patterns in your life, all right, that you have, thought patterns and emotional patterns that you have that have caused problems for you, all right? Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and open up my next lip gloss. I've got one down. Let's see how many I have to get through for this one. All right. So we're going to talk about the 4 main emotions. All right. God created us to feel emotions, and there are 4 main emotions that he created us to feel. Okay. You in any given week should and probably will feel all of these, and it is absolutely okay. All right. There is no sin in feeling an emotion, all right? Even anger has its place, right? The sin is not in the feeling, the sin is in the action, right? Okay, so the first emotion is mad, all right? You can feel mad, and when is the right time to feel mad? When someone sins against you, all right? So think about making little categories here. Mad, when do you feel mad? When's the right and appropriate time to feel mad? When someone sins against you, okay? All right, so that means if your kid is making you late. Now, if they're being disobedient, okay, maybe they're sinning against you. But if they're just dragging their feet, or they're being clumsy or whatever, and I do this all the time, where I react in anger to my children, it's not really the appropriate emotion to have. I could be, sad that they are taking forever. But we want to make sure that we're balancing this and having the appropriate emotion at the appropriate times, okay? So someone sins against you is when you want to feel, or when you should feel angry. If you struggle with feeling angry, maybe because you had an angry parent that didn't handle anger well, so you feel like it's wrong to feel angry. You might be the type of person that allows people to walk all over you because you don't feel like you have a right to be angry with them. But if somebody sins against you, you have a right to be angry with them. You have a right to set up a boundary and be like, that is not okay for you to do that to me. Now, we work through our anger, and we should, not only should we be able to express our anger in an appropriate way, but we should work through it with forgiveness, right? That God doesn't say just like stay there, like don't stay in the angry state forever. Work through it in forgiveness, all right? And it's great because we have a great oil called forgiveness that can help you with that, all right? We'll talk more about that in a minute. But the next emotion is bad. And this is a tough one for me personally, I'll warn you. But this is when you sin against someone else. The appropriate time to feel bad is when you sin. Well, you know what? You're not perfect. I'm not perfect, so we're going to screw up. We're going to sin against people probably on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis. So we should feel guilty. We should be convicted at that time. And the way to work through that is repentance, right? So we should repent and ask for forgiveness, turn away from that behavior and change. And there's a great oil called transformation that can help with things like that, all right? The next emotion is sad, all right? So mad is when people sin against you. Bad is when you sin against others. Sad is how you feel just because we live in a fallen, sinful world. It's not necessarily anybody's fault. Starving children in other parts of the world, if you know, kids are there are things that are happening in other parts of the world that aren't necessarily anyone's fault, and maybe people are even working to change it, but it should make us sad. It should make us feel a certain way. We should feel compassion and sadness for that because we live in a fallen world. Somebody has a major accident and dies. We lose someone that we love. It's not anybody's fault, but we lose them, and it's hard, and we have to grieve, and that's sad for us. And it's okay to feel sad. This is one I've had to work through, and I'm going to tell my story here in a bit. But the thing about sadness is what we get from it, and what we should look for is comfort from the Holy Spirit and compassion. If we don't allow ourselves to feel sadness, if you're like me, and I thought sad was kind of a useless emotion, because I'm like, it doesn't produce anything, it doesn't fix anything to feel sad about it, so why am I going to be sad about it? Then you might push it to the side. That's not very healthy, number one. It will come out in other ways, trust me. But one of my friends also told me, a dear friend, very much convicted me by saying to me, Ashley, if you don't allow yourself to feel sadness, then you're undercutting the role of the Holy Spirit in your life because He's your comforter. So if you don't allow yourself to feel sadness, then you're not allowing God to comfort you. And how are you going to then, in turn, learn to comfort others? For me, that was extremely convicting because then I saw that there is productivity in sadness. There's personal growth in sadness. And what I had lost my grandfather, and 4 years ago, actually, about in February, it was 4 years ago. And I did grieve. I mean, I did cry. It wasn't that I didn't cry. And I cried, often over his passing. But I'm further away from my family, so it's easier for me to kind of shove it to the side and not think about it as much. I got to a point about 2 years in that anytime I would go out and visit family, I was an emotional mess. Anytime I was out there and had any reminder and was just in that environment where I would usually see him, I was a mess. And I went through a grief share program at our church that was really helpful. And this is when I learned some of this. One of my friends shared it with me. She was going through boundaries. This was actually from her boundaries class. And I found it so helpful. I actually found myself, when I would just get in my car to go to grief share, I would just start crying. It was like, all right, time to cry. I mean, I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids at home. And I'm busy. I have a business that I run. And so this is one of those things where, it's easy to shove it aside. You've got a lot of things going on, especially once you get a certain distance away. Feel like, oh, I should have it together on this, or whatever. And so it was a really great experience for me to just be able to go, hey, I'm going to take time. I actually had to schedule time to cry. And sometimes if you have a busy life, you have to do that. You have to do that with all of the emotions that you deal with. Schedule time to process them. Schedule time to think about what you went through during the day. This isn't all about just letting all your emotions hang out anywhere that you are, It's about taking time during the day to reflect on what you felt about different things, why you maybe felt that way, whether or not the way you felt was the way you should have felt, and then asking God to help you process that in a healthy way. The last emotion is glad, all right? So we got mad, bad, sad, and glad. Glad is what you feel when things are going great. It's the joy of the Lord in us, and we should respond to that with gratitude. And there's a great oil called gratitude. We should always be grateful for the times when we can just be joyful and glad. We all struggle with at least one of these emotions. Trust me. My big one was sadness. I struggled to feel sadness. But what I learned is that if you struggle and you suppress one emotion, it dampens all of them. So it made sense to me because I used to get, when I was a kid, so excited. We were going to go on vacation and you're like, oh, you're giddy. And I found it harder to do that. I was excited, like on a mental level, but I really wasn't excited on an emotional level because I'm thinking about all the other things that are going on and that have to go into planning a trip or whatever. So, okay, now we're going to do our little test. Are you guys ready? What I want you to do is I want you to number 1 through 10, all right? At the top of this list, I want you to write mad, bad, sad, and glad. And just to remind you, mad is, how you feel, anger, right? Bad is guilt. Sad is, sadness. Glad is joy, happiness, okay? Those are the 4 emotions. Now, I'm going to give you a random word, just a random object. I'm going to say it, and you're going to write down the emotion that you feel in relation to that object, all right? How does that object make you feel? It might not make you feel anything. You might just be indifferent. You might be like, so just put indifferent, put a little dash, whatever. But I want you to really try to think about how you feel about each of these. I'll try to give you a few seconds to think about it with each one, okay? But I do want to get through this because we do have some other things to get through. But the first one is a house key. So think about that. Picture a house key. And how does that make you feel? Ideally, we would have these things and we'd be passing them around, but you can just pretend. Imagine you're being handed a house key. All right, number 2 is light bulb. Imagine you're being handed a light bulb. Number 3 is eraser. Number 4 is a combination lock. Number 5 is a blank piece of paper. Plug my phone in here. Number 6 is a ring, like a ring that you put on your finger. Number 7 is a teddy bear. Number 8 is a pillow. Lots of you guys probably ready to see your pillows soon. Number 9 is a broom. And number 10 is a mug like a coffee mug. All right. Now, when you're finished, I want you to kind of tally up each category. How many mads do you have? How many bads do you have? How many sads do you have? How many glads do you have? How many indifferents? All right. If you want to share below, go ahead and share. I'll share how mine went when I did this. Mine were, if I remember correctly, I had a lot of glads. I had a few mads. I had like maybe one bad and had no sad, like none at all. And what I learned from that is that I do not allow myself to stay in that sad mode. I don't allow myself to feel it. I really try to shove it quickly into another category. And even bad sometimes. I have a hard time with that. So I had a lot of glads. You would think that would be a great thing, right? I'm happy all the time, right? And most of people will probably tell you, especially if they just see me around, that I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky person, right? If you know me a little better than that, you know a little better than that. But ideally, we should be fairly balanced in this. If you find that you have one category that you do not allow yourself to process, that's completely at a zero, then you don't let yourself feel that emotion. All right? And that can cause a lot of problems. All right? So I want you to really think about that. Maybe do some journaling on that over the next couple of days over why that might be. You know, like I said, if you don't feel mad, maybe you had an angry parent or somebody, you saw some really bad examples of anger, and you don't feel like it's a safe emotion for you to feel or express. Bad, maybe there's some issues with self-righteousness, with not wanting to admit that with defensiveness, not wanting to admit when you're wrong. Maybe you have a hard time apologizing. Sad, I know we've talked a lot about that. You don't like to feel the sad emotion. For me, it felt unproductive. I just want to shove it all to the side. If you don't allow yourself to feel happiness, well, goodness, then we know lots of things. Maybe there's some guilt feeling, some condemnation. Maybe you feel like for some reason you don't deserve to be happy or feel happy. And then if you have a whole lot of indifference, then that's where you want to really think about about how much you process emotions, okay? Because I've seen this where if you don't allow yourself to process or feel emotions, then you just shut it all down and you don't allow yourself to feel anything. This doesn't mean that that you don't feel anything, because you do. We're all feeling beings. The reality is you so quickly move past that emotion that you don't allow yourself to really process it. So I'm going to tell on my husband a little bit, because Jason took this test and that's what he had. He had a lot of indifference. He had a few mads. And if I see Jason show any emotion, that's what it is. He gets mad about something. And he's not like mad all the time or anything like that, but he just doesn't process many emotions. He's not a super emotional person. But we've been together 16 years and I'd never seen him cry. I saw him tear up once in high school. But other than that, I'd never seen him cry. He'd had grandparents pass away, things like that. Never seen him cry. And so we go through this little thing and he's like, okay, so what do I need to do? I need to cry, right? He was making fun of it. But I said, no, maybe you just need to think about how you feel. Like, just think about it. At the end of the day, well, that made me feel like this, or that made me feel like that, or whatever. Well, that summer that we did this was not last summer, the summer before. They had a dear family friend pass away. Somebody he grew up with like an aunt. Like, they went on vacations together and stuff like that. She had a long battle with breast cancer, and she passed away that summer. And I saw him cry at the funeral. And this was just a few weeks after doing this exercise, and him, I think, going through and really thinking a little bit more like, yeah, Les, I think you could be friends with my husband. I saw that you said, so don't feel bad that you're that way. It's really not uncommon to feel indifferent, because that's exactly what my husband said. These are inanimate objects. They don't make me feel anything. But the reality is that those of us that did feel something, we felt it because we attached a memory to whatever that was, right? So somebody that sees number 6 and sees a ring, if they've been divorced, that may make them feel sad, or it may make them feel angry. Whereas some people may be, a ring, oh my goodness, and they're going to be happy, If the ring that they were given, that they have on their hand right now, is from their grandmother that they love that passed away, then it can make them feel sad. So that's how a ring could evoke all 4 emotions. It's because we associate memories with things, and we associate memories with experiences. So, for me, house key, when I did this, we were actually in the middle of buying our house, and I was like, awesome, new house key, yes, and I was excited and I was glad, all right? So it just depends on what it is. Oh, on mine, when I did it, it was a receipt was one of them. A receipt made me feel bad. It made me feel guilty because I was spending money, and I always feel guilty when I'm spending money. Okay, so you can kind of associate different things with that. Like, man, even just analyzing how you felt about each individual thing and why can teach you a lot, okay? So anyways, all of that to say, now that you kind of have analyzed yourself a little bit, yes, I'll read off the list again really quick. Shanna has asked. Number 1 was house key. Number 2 was light bulb. Number 3, eraser. Number 4, combination lock. Number 5, blank piece of paper. Number 6 was a ring. 7, teddy bear. 8, pillow. 9, broom. And 10 was a mug. Okay, so now that you have all thoroughly psychoanalyzed yourselves, I didn't do it, you did it, all right? You're the one that's going to go analyze all of that. You're going to take it and evaluate all of those things. What do we do with that? Okay, so maybe now you know I don't process this emotion, or I don't process that emotion, or I don't process any emotions. What do I do with it? Well, we're going to talk about how the oils can actually help you in this. I love what Daniel McDonald says in his book, Emotional Healing with Essential Oils. I'm going to read a little excerpt here because he just says it so well. The oils don't do the work for us, basically, is what he says. But he says essential oils assist individuals in taking an honest look within. They foster the right environment for healing, but they will not do the work for us. In gardening, it is a common experience to pull the weeds while leaving the roots. This is particularly true for hard and rocky soils. To ensure we uproot the whole plant, we can add water to the soil, which allows the entire weed to be removed. Similarly, essential oils prepare our emotional soil so that weeds may be removed with greater ease. How awesome is that, right? However, they do not do the weeding for us. Oils aren't going to go in there and just pick out all the emotional problems. If one neglects to do the work of pulling their weeds, they have simply watered the problem. On the other hand, those who combine essential oils with emotional work reap the fruit of their labor. All right. So I want you guys to think about this, not as the oils there's not some magical power in the oils. All right. God created them, and he created them for us to use, and they have amazing abilities, but they don't have any magical powers in them. The power comes from God, right? And so we using these oils and doing journaling and prayer and introspection and thinking about how our past experiences and past traumas, that is where the work is done. You're using the oils to assist and facilitate your body on a physiological level, all right, with the right frequency and things like that, to help support you as you make choices to change your thought patterns, or choices to forgive, or choices to repent, choices to change how you are doing things, choices to trust God and not lean into that anxiety, choices to release and let go of past experiences, all right? Choices to heal, because those are choices that we make. And trust me, if you are shoving something down and you are refusing to deal with it because you know it's going to be painful, and I'm not going to lie to you, for some issues it will be painful to drag it up. But if you don't drag it up and let it get some air and let it get out, it's not going to heal. So I want to encourage you guys to make that step. It's a brave choice to do that. I understand that, and I know completely. But I want to encourage you guys to really do that and look at that. On the other hand, I'm going to tell you a quick little story about an oil that did some work in my life that I didn't realize it was doing. A couple summers ago, I was walking around my house, and God gave me the oil Petitgreen. I don't know how many of you guys have ever used Petitgreen, but it is not an oil that I had on my wish list. I had maybe scanned people for it a couple of times, but I couldn't even tell you what it did off the top of my head. Petitgreen. So I was like, all right. It just came to my head. And I thought, maybe that was God. Maybe I'm supposed to get that oil. Yes, it smells like pickles or pickled okra to me. That's what it smells like. So I did. I got this oil and I started using it. I used it kind of on my abdomen or on the bottom of my feet because it does smell like pickles. Oh, I love that, Shanna. Shanna says when you bring the darkness into light, it loses all of its power. And that's so true. And that's why getting in a group of people, if you've got major issues to deal with, you might look into a counseling group. For me, Grief Share was so helpful because I was able to talk and express, and I verbally process things. That was very helpful for me. There's all kinds of Celebrate recovery groups for all kinds of different issues, and counseling groups for abuse and things like that. Don't be afraid to step into an environment like that. If you're local, let me know if you're looking for something like that, because I know that we have some. I've got a friend, Dee Jones, who's a counselor, and she is amazing, and she runs some groups that are and she ran the grief share group that I went through. If you're local, I'm in North Texas, Salina, Texas area. So Aubrey, Salina, anywhere along the 380 corridor between Denton and McKinney, then we got some options for you. But I started using Petitgrain. I didn't really know why I was using it, but I just felt like I was supposed to be using it. About 6 months into it, my parents are divorced, and my dad wanted to meet with us and my sister and I and sit down. And basically what he did, my parents got divorced. My dad chose to leave. And my mom went through a lot of grief over that, went through a lot of life changes and life choices that maybe weren't always healthy. And because of those life choices that she made, I lived with my dad in high school and things like that. And my dad went back into the ministry, and now he's a pastor, and he got remarried and all of those things. But he came and he did something that he had never done before, and he apologized to my sister and I. It was a very emotional thing. It was the most impactful thing I think that he's ever done. Not that he wasn't a good father, because he was a really good father, but that for me I think was the most impactful thing, because he said, I don't want to defend myself. I want to hear what that was like for you guys, the whole process, because we just never really talked about it. What the divorce, what the struggles were for y'all. And I want to apologize for my part, because it was my decision. And he really took full responsibility. And it was a beautiful, wonderful, thing. I had forgiven him years ago, and worked through forgiveness with him where I maybe had some bitterness. And it wasn't overt or out. I mean, we've always had a good relationship, my dad and I, but those underlying things, I kind of worked through all of that, but still, sometimes you work through those things and you never expect to hear, I'm sorry, you never expect to hear that. But he did. He came and he did that. And it was such a powerful thing. Well, not only that, but what he did not only released in us, kind of this deeper connection, I think, but also between him and my mom. Even though they never talked, there was a loosening of things. My mom didn't even come to my kids' birthday parties for a couple of years because she didn't want to see him. That's how not great their relationship was. And it was kind of on again, off again. They kind of would get along for a while and then they wouldn't. But that spring, she saw him at my daughter's birthday and she gave him a hug. And she told him, she said, hey, I think that we should all get together. My mom's remarried too, we should all get together and go to dinner and just talk sometime. And I was in tears. And what I learned about Petitgrain is that it can help restore broken family relationships. Not only that, but it helps us get rid of family legacies that we hold to out of loyalty that aren't healthy. Okay, so if you have a poverty mentality in your family, which we were dealing with that at the time, also dealing with a little bit of poverty mentality passed down, and there was a little bit of guilt. We were moving into a nice neighborhood, into a new house, and we were really dealing with some, just dealing with a lot of emotions with that, with how much to kind of share with our families and how much, how other people, a lot of thought went into how other people were going to view that, how other people were going to think about that. And I have a great family that I love very much, but there's still always those things that we think about. And that's what I was working through. And basically Petitgrain was God saying, you know what? There are things about your family legacy that are amazing. I have a strong spiritual legacy from my grandfather and my dad that have been passed down to me that you should carry on. But there are parts of your family legacy that you need to leave behind. You do not want to pass down to your children. And it is not unloyal to your family to let them go. It is not disloyal. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not disloyal to your family to let them go. It is the right thing to do, to let those things go and to grow and learn and do better and to teach your children better. Okay? So that's my story about Petitgrain. So Petitgrain didn't necessarily do the work for me. The opportunities were brought along, and God knew what opportunities were going to be brought along. I was thinking about all of these things. I didn't know what Petitgrain would do, and man, God just moved me to use it. So if you feel the Holy Spirit nudging you to use an oil, use it. You may not know why, you may not know what it does. It doesn't matter. There's a reason for it. And it may not even be written down anywhere what that reason is, but use it because it can have a huge impact in your life. Okay, I think my phone's plugged in and charged up enough now. I'm going to set this back down so I won't make you guys feel drunk anymore. All right, so we're going to go through quick just a few little protocols, all right? There is Gary's Good Day Protocol. A lot of you guys have probably seen that and used it. It's very simple. These protocols are going to build themselves. We're going to talk about 3 different protocols for working through. Yes, Petitgrain watered that soil. It did. I didn't even know that that's what it was doing, but that's what it did. And it was amazing. And when I went back and read in fact, you can read what Petitgrain is good for in that McDonald book. Is that what his last name? Yes, Daniel McDonald book. And when you read, there's like a full page and a half on what Petitgrain does. And when I read it, it was like after all of this had happened and I was nearly in tears. I was just like, I was blown away by all of it because I was like, oh my goodness, all of this, yes, it's amazing. So we're going to talk about 3 different protocols that kind of build on top of one another. And then I'm going to give you guys some resources for doing things a little bit more in depth, okay? This first one is called the Gary's Great Day Essential Oil Protocol, okay? So this is the protocol Gary says to use just to have a great day. Excuse me. We start with Valor, okay? When I say Valor, don't grumble, okay? If you have Valor, because I know some of you have been members for a long time and you're hoarding it, this is a great time to use it. If you don't have Valor, use Valor 2. It is created with the same frequency as Valor or as close to a frequency as you can get. So use that one. And Valor 2 has been replaced. Valor has been replaced with Valor 2 in the Feelings Kit. So don't be afraid to use that instead, okay? So start with Valor. And it's great for balancing your body. This is one called Chiropractor in a Bottle because it helps bring your body into physical balance. Apply a few drops to your palms, rub them together, and then inhale. All right, and then you can put it on the back of your neck. Sometimes I like to drip it and just drip it right down my back here, and rub down as far as I can to kind of soothe some of that. And then I like to place it on the inside of my wrists. I do this a lot if I'm using Valor, if I'm using any kind of oil that is grounding and balancing for me. You can place your wrists together, take a few deep breaths, because what that does is your wrists, they both have arteries right here. And when you do that, it's actually going to bring things through your heart and through your whole body a lot faster, okay? So when you just put them on your wrist, and you can even, you're going to smell it because it's right here. Take some deep breaths. It gets that blood pumping and it's going to get that oil through your whole system really quick. Take a moment to be still and focus on your intentions for the day. You know, this is the idea of being intentional with your thoughts. All right. You've got Valor that's bringing balance to you, but what is it you want to cultivate? What do you want to accomplish today? Okay. Think about that while Valor is giving you the balance and courage to face that. Step 2 is harmony, all right? And I'm going to share these links that have all of these protocols, so don't feel like you have to remember this. In fact, I'm reading from a blog, from the Young Living blog right now, all right? The second one is harmony, where you can put it in your left palm, rub your palms together again. You can put on your solar plexus, which is just below your sternum, right here over your diaphragm, all right? It's kind of between your sternum and your belly button. And this is your will energy center, all right? They call this your center in theater, where they want you to breathe from your center. They want you to breathe to your core. If you're a dancer, this is really that energy center. It's your core. It's where a lot of your energy comes from on stage because you're breathing to there. You're holding yourself upright. If you ever do any kind of dance movement or even certain workouts, Pilates and bar, really focus a lot on this core energy. It's amazing what you do when the energy you feel when you just take a few deep breaths all the way down into that core. But as you inhale the aroma, use the affirmation, let my will harmonize and align to the greater good for all I connect with today. And this could be a prayer. This would be a time where you connect with God and say, okay, God, let me do your will today. Let me be in harmony with you and your will for me today. So you may have a specific intention, somebody you need to harmonize with, whether that's customers, coworkers, kids, spouse, anybody that you know you're going to come in contact with today, you want to be in harmony with. Step 3 is joy. You can place a drop of joy in your left palm, rub your hands together. And there's a reason for doing that while they have you drop it and rub them together. It actually has to do with the frequency of the oil. I'm not always that precise, to be honest with you. But there is a reason for it, why they give you such precise details. Slowly inhale the scent, then place your hands on your heart. If you're looking to become more open-hearted, use these moments to let this blend infuse into your heart's desires. It's also a great, great blend for grief. All right, I use this oil over my heart at my grandfather's funeral. It is a great oil to help kind of bring out that, bring out the joy, because when we think about grief, you know, we think about the sadness and everything, but the reality is grief is, the reason why grief is can be so hard and so extreme is because of the joy that relationship brought us. So yes, I will be sharing these, I'll be sharing these links and all of these resources, so you'll be able to go back through. You don't have to remember all of this or write all of this down. So that's why joy is so helpful with grief, because it allows us to really focus on the joy of that relationship and the joy that it brought. And that's a big part of working through grief. All right, step 4 is white angelica. And Candy talked about white angelica just a minute ago. But this blend is known for its properties for energetic protection, all right? Like a bouncer for negative energy or disturbing thoughts. All right, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to get in some of your business real quick. Some of you have, you want and desire to be more positive in your thoughts, but you have a toxic workplace, all right? You have a toxic family, or you have to go into a toxic environment at times. And that's really hard. It's hard to change our thought patterns, and it's hard for us to start trying to get out of those toxic thought patterns when we are in it all day long. Okay? So white angelica, what it does is it helps protect us from that. So, you know, if you're a teacher, I was a teacher for years, you know, going into the teacher's lounge and you know you're going to hear all that grumbling about the administration or whatever, or the schedule or whatever it is, that's when you need this oil. All right, carry it around with you. Don't just use it in the morning, but use it throughout the day. This is an oil when I got a dream that I was going to be under spiritual attack. Like, this is the oil I should have grabbed. I totally didn't. I went out of town and left it here, but this is the oil I should have grabbed and I should have used, because that is that, you know, whatever was coming my way, whatever negativity, I didn't want it to get to me. I didn't want it to get into my head. You know what I mean? I wanted to be able to intentionally say, I don't want to let that in my head. All right. And we have to be intentional about that, because we can't control other people. That's the reality. And sometimes you don't have a choice. If you have to go into that workplace, you don't have a choice of who your family is. If you have a certain group of family members and you're going to an event or something and you know they're going to be there and they're kind of toxic, but they're family and you need to go, man, just rub some white angelica on and find the opportunities to walk away when you need to, you know. Don't be afraid to intentionally work to shield yourself from negativity. All right. So the second protocol is just a little bit deeper, and it just incorporates putting forgiveness over your belly button. This is the one that has all of those oils that we just talked about are in the feelings kit. And this brings in forgiveness. Forgiveness right on your center, right on your belly button. If you're working to forgive anybody, or if you're working to forgive yourself, okay, that is really where you want to apply that oil, because it's going to help you so much. Apply forgiveness on the navel to let go of negative emotion. Apply present time on your wrists and behind your ears. Release over your liver. You're releasing that anger, releasing that frustration and resentment. Apply 1 to 2 drops of inner child under your nose. I'm going to talk about inner child a little bit more in just a second. But when I'm going to go back through these steps, and there's a few more oils stuck in here that are in the Essential Oils Desk Reference Protocol. All of those oils are actually in the feelings kit, okay? So that's the feelings kit. If you have that kit, or if you don't have any of these oils and you want to get them in your house to really do some, in your home to do some major emotional work, this is a great place to start, okay? This protocol takes the feeling skin and adds a few extra oils to it. Okay, and this is the protocol that's in the Essential Oils Desk Reference, and it talks about just being a simple guideline for letting go of some old emotional baggage. This is not going to be an everyday thing. All right, this is going to be something that you're like, you know what? I know I have one specific thing that that I need to let go of and work on, and I've got some time. All right, because you want to take some time to do this, to work through it. Maybe you've got a half day off. You got an evening, because you don't want to do this protocol and then go out and be around other people. Emotional release, once it stirs some things up, you want to be able to kind of sit and be still and process it. This is the kind of thing you do, and then you go get in the tub and then you go to bed. Okay, so or you just sit quietly for a day. I know for moms, you're just laughing at that and the insanity of that because you don't have that kind of time. I know, but for some of you, you might need to just get away, even if it's a half a day, and be like, or have your husband take your kids away and be like, listen, there's some things I really need to work through because I'm going to be a better wife and I'm going to be a better mom if I can work through these things. So it says it's important to be in a quiet place and sitting with no cell phone, no TV, no noise happening while you're doing this, okay? So get quiet. And the first step is valor. Again, we're balancing all of that physical energy. And then the second step is harmony. Now we're balancing all of our emotional and mental energies. That's what harmony, and we're coming in tune with God's will, and that's our intention there. All right. The third step, this is where it gets a little different, is sacred frankincense. And this helps to regulate emotions, reduces feelings of stress. It's very calming. And then, frankincense obviously brings us into the presence of God and brings his presence into us. And if we're very intentional about that, that's why, frankincense is very biblical. And the incense is part of the incense that was burned in the temple. So you can think about when you're trying to find restoration and healing, how fitting it is that frankincense is a part of that on an emotional level. So when used during prayer, as the fullness and the capacity of this oil brings support physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Placing this oil on the temples, the back of the neck, top of the head, and over the heart allows the opportunity for a deeper spiritual connection. There's a lot of other things that it can do that I am just going to, I'll share this resource with you guys and you can read through it about some specific issues it works for as far as trauma and different emotions you might be working through, grief, loss, bereavement, divorce, any kind of negative trauma that you might be working through. Sacred frankincense can be very helpful in that. Step 4 is the 3 wise men blend. This is one that I haven't used a lot, that I have. And so once I saw this, I was like, I am going to be using this. But it was formulated to open the subconscious mind. We talk about that subconscious mind connection through the pineal stimulation. Okay, your pineal gland's like right back here. And it's when you inhale oils, it gets to your pineal gland really quickly. Your pineal and pituitary glands work together to create serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, those feel-good hormones and things like that. So they kind of have some interactions with your emotions and your feelings there. But it helps release deep-seated trauma encoded in the DNA. All right? DNA-encoded trauma, this is when we start talking about something, those thought patterns that have been over and over and over. Maybe this is hereditary thought patterns. Maybe this is those things that have been passed down. Maybe it's even emotional traumas that have been passed down. That is something that is a little odd to think about. But, I even think about, like, poverty mentality being passed down from person to person in our family and what that looked like. This blend opens the crown and stimulates the limbic system, bringing a sense of grounding and uplifting through positive memory recall. Okay? Place 2 to 3 drops on the crown of the head. Step 5 is release. And it's going to help a person, release is going to help a person let go of the energy that comes from anger and hate within the cells of the liver in order to create emotional peace and well-being. Freedom comes from being at peace rather than harboring negative emotions. So rub 1 to 2 drops over the front and back of the liver area in a circular motion. I think your liver's on your right side. Am I right? I'm not positive on that. You guys give me a thumbs up if I'm right. Somebody look it up and tell me if the liver's on the right or left. I think it's on the right side. Idaho balsam fir is next. Step 6, this is a wonderful aroma that is very grounding and relaxing to the body. It helps with the effects of seasonally affected disorders, lifting the depression that comes from that. So this time of year, if you haven't been out in the sun much, I'm in Texas and we've had lots of sunshine all winter, so I don't know that many people are dealing with this, but those of you up north that are about to, or even out east that are about to experience a big snowstorm and you're going to be stuck inside for a little bit, use some balsam fir. It's a strengthening oil. It stimulates the immune system, creating an increase of energy and sense of well-being. Rub a drop on the brainstem, that's right back here, and under the nose. Breathe in the fortifying, balancing fragrance, bringing in the feeling of security. Imagine that feeling of security, because if there's ever a time where people maybe feel secure, it's around the holidays. Even though it's stressful for parents, I think for kids it's always like that time of everybody's together and everybody's trying to get along, so there's a security that goes there. And balsam fir, I mean, smells like a Christmas tree, right? So it has to be that, it's that grounding and connecting to that security. And so that's to me, that just is amazing. Step 7 is inner child. It's a blend that may stimulate childhood memory. When children experience abuse or trauma, they become disconnected from their inner child or identity. This disconnection may not be apparent until many years later, manifesting itself as a midlife crisis. The inner child fragrance may stimulate memory response, helping one reconnect with his or her fundamental identity. This is an essential step or condition to achieving emotional balance. Apply 1 drop under the nose and 1 drop around the navel. For me, the way that I understand inner child, just having scanned people that it comes up for them, inner child can show up for anyone that had to grow up really fast. Maybe it was because both of your parents worked outside of the home and you had younger siblings that you had to take care of. So you didn't get to really always be a kid. You had to really step up and be an adult. And in some ways you lose that connection to your childhood identity and who you really are, because you become who you need to be for the sake of your family, which is great. But when you get older and you start trying to work through that, it can cause problems, because you suddenly go, I don't know who I am, and I feel like I haven't had control over any part of my life. And so you want to work through those things before they become a problem, right? Before it becomes a midlife crisis. Step 8 is forgiveness. And again, we want to move that, put it on our navel, and 1 to 2 drops in a clockwise motion. It helps us release negative memories to facilitate forgiveness, letting go, and moving on. And if you don't know, forgiveness is something that isn't always necessarily done once. Sometimes we have to forgive. Forgiveness is a choice we make on a daily basis, especially if you're dealing with major trauma, major issues. You're gonna think back through. Oh wow, Shanna said an inner child came up when she scanned a Vietnam veteran. Yes, absolutely. I mean, people sent into war when they're still, barely out of high school. That's, of course, inner child. But forgiveness is something, if you start thinking back into that past experience, you feel like you forgave them, and then you start thinking about it, and it starts bringing up all those old emotions, you're going to have to make that choice again to forgive. It doesn't mean that you do it once and you're done, and if you don't, if you go back and start thinking about it again, that you're a failure. No, I think we all have to work through that. It's about making that choice to move back into that forgiving state of mind really quickly. And giving it over to God and saying, no, I'm choosing to forgive that person. Forgiveness is not about restoration. We talked about this weekend in our infusion in church with our 5th and 6th grade kids. Forgiveness is not restoration. Forgiveness doesn't have to be restoration. If there's somebody that was abusive to you and they were never, or they wronged you and they never showed any sign of remorse, you do not have to enter back into a relationship with that person. That would be crazy. All right. And that's okay. That is okay. Sometimes forgiveness is just what it is it's releasing that person from the consequences. All right. Now, one of the consequences may be that your relationship is severed, and that's okay. But maybe you are not going to be rude to that person. You're not going to be hateful behind their back, right? Even if they deserve it. They may absolutely deserve it. You're not going to, if you run into them, forgiveness means that you maybe say hi and you're courteous to them when you have every right to punch them in the face? You know, I mean, sometimes we do have that right. Sometimes society says, yeah, that would be perfectly within your rights to do that, all right? Sometimes the things that people do, that's what they deserve. But we instead say, no, I'm not going to give you what you deserve. You're not going to be, I'm still going to set up a boundary to protect myself and my family, but I'm releasing you from the consequences of that. I'm not going to belittle you or talk bad about you, okay? So I just want to always make that distinction, because manipulative people will say, no, you haven't forgiven me. You're not really forgiving because you're not, you know, letting me come over, or you're not letting me see my grandkids, or you're not, you know, spending time with me like you used to. Well, you know, sorry, those are the natural consequences of your toxic behavior. And as long as that person is not showing any sign of remorse or turning around or whatever, then you don't have to have reconciliation to the relationship the way it was before, okay? Yes, Shanna says her counselor described forgiveness as absorbing the consequences, which is what Christ did for us. That's all it is. Forgive others as Christ forgave us. Step 9 is grounding. Sorry, I'm moving on to my third cough drop here because I can feel it tightening up here. We're almost through this, guys. We're going to get through it. All right. Grounding may be helpful in situations where one is overexcited about new ideas or wants to escape into a protective fantasy. I find that very interesting. Grounding is very helpful for my 7-year-old daughter. In this kind of mental state, it's easy to make choices that lead to bad relationships, bad business decisions, and other unfortunate circumstances. This, to me, goes back to our perception. We are totally diving into our perception and perceiving things from, oh, this is my reality, and so this is what I see, when really it's you kind of filtering the circumstance through your memory bank, right? Grounding helps us get us back to like real reality is. That's why having good Christian friends around you is so important, because you can get that outside perspective that can see things in a way that you don't. They're not tainted by, they have their own, you know, memory bank that they're tainted with, but it's not yours. So you get to see it from a different perspective, and it gives you a little bit of a better, a well-rounded perspective of different situations. So we seek an escape because we have no anchor to know how to deal with negative emotions. I think for me, that was something that I struggled with in the grief of my grandfather. As I said, I felt unanchored. I feel like I'm just afloat, like I don't feel anchored. The aroma of grounding helps restore confidence and peace, enabling us to deal logically and peacefully with life's decisions. My daughter, when she was younger, just had major meltdowns, overstimulation, and this is where grounding was really helpful for her. Apply 1 to 2 drops in the back of the neck and on the sternum. Step 10 is hope. Hope is formulated to reconnect with a feeling of strength and optimism for the future. Hope must be in place in order to move forward in life. Hopelessness can cause a loss of vision, of goals and dreams, making it impossible to release emotional blocks. This aroma may also help in overcoming tendencies toward depression. Massage 1 drop on the outer edge of each ear. For a lot of people, they have been the way they are, and they have struggled with the emotional and thought patterns that they have for so long they don't feel like they can change. That's where hope can help so much. Step 11 is joy. Talked about joy over the heart. Step 12 is present time. Has an empowering fragrance that gives a feeling of being in the moment. One can only progress through emotional release when in the present time. You can't be thinking ahead to the future, which is my problem. You can't be stuck in the past. You got to release it and let it go. All right, so you got to be in the present time to be able to release negative emotions and move forward. And sometimes that's hard. It's hard for me personally. Present time is an oil that I carry around with me with the intention to use it a lot more than I do, because it's hard for me to sit and be still and be in the moment. That's something I really struggle with. Step 13 is Sarah. Sarah is an essential oil blend formulated specifically for opening the limbic system to release the memories of serious trauma connected with sexual and or ritual abuse. I am going to encourage some of you guys, even if that is not something that you have dealt with, to consider using Sarah. Sarah smells beautiful to me. I've actually been using it for the past year or so, I'll wear it as a perfume. Be careful applying it in public because Sarah can bring out a very strong emotional response from other people. I have put it on in public and had people break down in tears in front of me for no apparent reason. So I just want to encourage you guys to be cautious when you're applying it, but I love it and I started to use it. And sexual and ritual abuse are not in my past. I'm not saying that because I want to scare any of you away or condemn any of you that is in your past. I just want to be open and transparent with you. Those are not in my past, but I was still drawn to the oil and I started using it. My oil for last year was acceptance, and that was the oil that I used every day. And then Sarah was another oil that I used a lot, and bergamot was another oil that I used a lot. And as I was reading through on the emotional uses of these oils, Sarah is actually an oil for acceptance, and it helps with acceptance. And so does bergamot, helps with acceptance. So I just found it again that I was just drawn to those oils that help with acceptance when that's exactly what I was using acceptance for. So sometimes you're using it for a different reason. And so just don't be afraid don't ever stress if you're drawn to an oil that has a specific use and you feel like, I don't really need that. Like, what's wrong? Am I suppressing anything? No, it may not be anything like that. Okay. Step 14 is white angelica. Again, we talked about that protection from negative influences. And then step 15, it says to take time while still in the quiet meditative space and choose an oil of your choice to enhance this process. So pick your favorite oil, pick an oil you want. Reflect on your goals. You know, maybe if you're using the Ula oils, maybe you're needing to get rid of some emotional blocks, for growing in your finances or in your business, in your field, or in your fun, in your friends. Maybe you feel like you don't have any friends. Maybe you want your family to be closer and grow closer together. Maybe you have another oil that you love. Believe is an oil that I love. It's one of my favorite oils. I use it a lot. I use it on a very consistent basis and have for the past 4 years. So that's probably the oil that I would go to because it's just been an oil that has been a consistent oil that I love. It says, think on the positive things in your life, your goals, your dreams, along with the things you're choosing to change. All right, remember this is about your choice, the choices that you're making. Place a couple of drops of oil of your choice over your heart, back of the neck, cupping your hands together. Breathe in the life-giving, fragrant molecules. This can be a fortifying process, so take time to write some notes about your experience. You can choose many oils and blends for this quiet time. Rose, ylang-ylang, sacred frankincense, highest potential, gathering gift. Gives a whole list of great oils here. When you're finished with your quiet time or meditation, do not distract your focus by immediately watching TV or going out to a social event. Remember that the oils may continue to work on an emotional level for several days. Several oils that you can carry with you as you're doing this is Valor, Tranquil, Rutavala, Stress Away. Tranquil for me is amazing. It helps me a ton just when I get in those moments of stress. Sorry, my puppy's making noise out there. Use them on a regular basis, especially at nighttime before you go to sleep. Anyways, so then it gives some great resources here, which are pretty much all the same resources that I encourage you guys to look at. So really the idea is that you are making a choice to make a change. You're making a choice to dive in on an emotional level to past hurts and feelings that are stumping you. We all know people in our lives that go through a major trauma and it cripples them for the rest of their life. They never recover. Maybe it's a divorce and then they never gain their self-esteem back. And maybe they become bitter. And so bitter and angry, and they just never recover from that. And you see it affect not only their relationships elsewhere, but you see it affect their health in a negative way. And I want you guys to just think about that. Think about the people in your life that you know need this. Not only you, but your family. For those of us that are moms, how awesome would it be if we started helping our kids and teaching our kids to work through emotions in a healthy way? I mean, then they don't have to deal with the baggage that we've had to deal with and carry around with us because we didn't know how to do that, because our parents didn't know how to do that, right? So you're creating an entirely different legacy for your family, an entirely different emotional legacy, and a legacy of not only physical health and getting chemicals out of your home, but emotional health. And that can be something that's passed down for many generations. I'm doing a Bible study right now by Beth Moore called Breaking Free, and it really is going along so well with all of this and diving into family history and things like this. And so if you are a believer, a strong believer, you have major bondages and struggles, and you want a good Bible study that will help you work through this, I highly recommend that one, Breaking Free by Beth Moore. I'm still working through I'm like 3 weeks behind on my daily homework because it just takes me so long to kind of process through it. But it has gone along so well with this. And it goes along so well with this. And we learn how our past, even things that aren't that, we think, oh, I handled that well, I was just fine. It just different things that happen in our lives teach us in different ways, and we react and respond to God in different ways. For me, I've always been very independent. And so when my parents got divorced and, my mom made some poor choices and I moved in with my dad, but we got along fine, but we weren't super close. And I was a teenage girl living with her dad, which is always kind of a little awkward. I was just very independent. And so, I learned to make my own decisions and make my own choices. My dad had rules that I had to follow, and I went to church and things like that. But, when it comes to God now, the way that I react and respond to God is very much like, okay, God, like, you tell me what to do, and then I'll go and do it. Like, I want to be obedient, and I want to please you, but this whole, like, sitting and spending time still and quiet with God is hard for me. And it's hard for me because it's not the way that I related to my parents. And it's very different, and there are certain things in my past, not only my parents' divorce, but, bad relationships and things like that made me feel like I wanted to be in control of my future, because I've had other people's decisions kind of mess with the way that my life went, and I don't like that. So it's hard for me, in a sense, to give up control to God, even though God, of all people, I should be able to trust with my future and my plans. I want to be like, okay, God, you tell me where we're going, and then I'll make it happen, instead of letting God make it happen and me being along for the ride. And so you start to see, even if it's not something that's major and emotional and you don't deal with anxiety or whatever, how diving into these things can help you on a spiritual level, help you connect to your Creator, help you become more open and available to do what it is He has for you. Because healed people, right? So you're talking about here, hurt people, healed people, heal people. And so I know that I'm on that path. I'm certainly not there yet, and I'm working through some things. And so this for me is still a journey. I promise I will share all of the resources, all of the things. There are several blog posts and things that I read directly from there, and resources that I read, and I will share them here along with the titles of all the books. I'll do that right after we get off of here. Thank you guys. Nancy says, what do you recommend using closed persons not ready to change? You can diffuse things like release. For a family member that's just not ready, you can do transformation if you can get them to use it. But a lot of, and the oils may soften up some of that and make them more willing to change. But the reality is, the oils don't do the work for you. The change has to be something that people want to work for. And that's, that's kind of what this is. That's what the journey is about. It's about working through it, and the oils being a support for the things that we're wanting to work through and heal through. And obviously, if you have some major things to work through, a counselor can be just hugely beneficial in helping you work through those things, or a group, a small group counseling session or something like that. Those things are great. Don't feel bad if you need something like that. Use the oils along with it. Journal. You don't have to do it by yourself. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys. Thanks for bearing with me tonight, and my coughing and my voice is starting to go, I can tell. So thank you all very much for your patience, and I will get those resources to you all right now. Talk to you later. Bye.